Samsung made the decision between the Galaxy S25, S25 Plus, and S25 Ultra a lot harder this year as they blur the line between the Ultra and the other two devices. So in this video, I'm going to cover 10 different categories to give you guys a complete picture of how these compare to each other. The cameras are where we'll see the most noticeable difference between all these devices, so let's start there. The S25 and S25 Plus have the exact same camera setup, while the S25 Ultra gets an upgraded ultra-wide and wide camera, as well as a dedicated 5x zoom camera and laser autofocus. And that laser autofocus does make a difference when taking low-light photos. You can see that the S25 Ultra grabs focus significantly faster than the S25 and S25 Plus. But when we switch to a bright environment, there's really no difference in autofocus speeds. Taking a look at some ultra-wide photo samples, we can see that the pictures are pretty similar when the camera is set to 12 megapixels, but when you switch to 50 megapixels on the S25 Ultra, you get significantly more detail when zooming in. When it comes to macro photos, the S25 Ultra is the only phone that can use the ultra-wide camera for this. The S25 and S25 Plus just can't focus on close objects with their ultra-wide lens. Though their one-time zoom macro photos are pretty comparable to what you get with the S25 Ultra's one-time zoom macro photos. Taking a look at low-light video performance, the upgraded ultra-wide camera on the S25 Ultra does seem to do a better job of reducing noise on the video. The S25 and S25 Plus just seem to have a purplish noise on top of the video. But all three phones tend to stutter a bit with these slow panning shots in low light. If we run the panning test again during the day, we can see the stuttering is reduced, but it is still there. Though I should point out that pretty much every camera has this stuttering issue, specifically with slow panning shots, and you're not going to see any stuttering in any normal videos you take. The one-time zoom cameras are pretty comparable in low light. The main difference is that the S25 Ultra tends to have more of a bluish tint to it versus the more purplish tint on the S25 and S25 Plus. And if I pause the video here and zoom in on the shingles on the shed, you can see a little bit more detail on the S25 Ultra, but it's pretty negligible at this point. When we switch to a 5x zoom low light video, the S25 Ultra takes a pretty significant lead over the S25 and S25 Plus. And that's because the S25 Ultra has that dedicated 5x zoom camera, whereas the S25 and S25 Plus use a 3x zoom camera that they have to digitally zoom in on. The entire S25 lineup now has this new zoom option when you start recording, and if you tap this, you'll be able to get a constant zoom speed. So if I drag this little slider up, you'll see that it's a nice, slow, and smooth zoom that's at that constant speed all the way up. And as I swipe up a little further, it zooms in a little faster, and you can obviously go super fast by pulling it all the way down or all the way up. Now we're going to test how smoothly the phones switch between lenses as we zoom in. So right about there is the first lens swap. And I'm testing this right now on the S25, but you're going to get the same results with the S25 and S25 Plus because those have the exact same cameras. And there's the second lens swap there. Now if I zoom all the way in to the maximum zoom, which is 12x zoom, and that's what your max zoom is going to look like on the S25 and S25 Plus. Now we're going to test the lens swap on the S25 Ultra. This has one extra lens, so you're going to see an extra swap. You already saw the first swap there. There's a second lens swap. You'll see one more. And there's a last lens swap, and we're going to zoom all the way into 20x zoom, which is a bit further than you can zoom in on the S25 and S25 Plus. And if we compare the two videos, you'll notice that the S25 Ultra does have a bit more detail in it compared to the other two. When it comes to regular photos, all three phones are going to do a great job with everything from 0.6x zoom to 3x zoom. Where the S25 Ultra really starts to shine is with the longer zoom photos. Anything from 5x zoom all the way out to 100x zoom is going to look noticeably better on the S25 Ultra. This really matters for those of you who want to take pictures of your kids playing sports while you're on the sideline, or taking pictures at places like the zoo, or even getting great photos of the moon. The S25 and S25 Plus are limited to a maximum of 30x zoom, so you can forget about getting a good moon photo. The front-facing cameras on all these devices are identical, so if you're big into taking selfies, all of these are going to perform well. But unfortunately, the cameras can't make you any more attractive, so maybe next year. The last big difference with the cameras is found when we switch to 8K resolution. You'll see that the S25 Ultra is the only one that has 0.6x and 5x zoom options for 8K recording. And the reason for that is because you need at least a 34 megapixel sensor to get 8K video recording, and the S25 and S25 Plus only have a large enough sensor with their one-time zoom camera. So if you're really big into 8K video recording, the S25 Ultra is going to be significantly better than the other two devices. The cameras aren't the only big difference between these phones. Something that was immediately noticeable was the lack of an anti-reflective layer on the S25 and S25 Plus. The S25 Ultra does a way better job of minimizing the reflection of that bright light. And this is really noticeable when using the phones in bright conditions like outside on a bright day. The S25 Ultra is also the only phone to get Gorilla Armor 2 on the front glass. Last year, Samsung debuted Gorilla Armor on the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and after a year, I don't have a single scratch on mine. So this upgraded glass with even more scratch and shatter resistance is significant. For reference, the S25 and S25 Plus only have Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which isn't nearly as scratch resistant as Gorilla Armor, at least not in my experience. And while we're talking about durability, the S25 and S25 Plus have aluminum frames, while the S25 Ultra has an upgraded titanium frame. That should theoretically make the S25 Ultra a bit more durable, but honestly, I don't think the frame differences are going to make too much of a difference. The biggest difference is really going to be with the screens of the devices. The last difference between the screens is that the S25 only has FHD plus resolution, while these other two devices have up to QHD plus resolution. But for some reason, they're both set to FHD plus out of the box, so you will have to come into the display settings and set these to QHD plus if you want that maximum resolution. That said, since the Galaxy S25 is a significantly smaller display compared to these two devices, you're going to end up with a similar amount of pixels per inch on the S25 versus the Plus and the Ultra, so don't let the difference in resolution be a deciding factor for you. Not to mention, all three of these devices use the same screen technology as well, so videos will look equally amazing on all three. One difference that I did notice on the S25 screen versus the Plus and the Ultra is that the S25 has a slightly warmer color temperature, which means when the screen is mostly white, it has a slightly yellow tint compared to the more blue tint on the Plus and the Ultra. That said, you probably wouldn't notice unless you had them side by side, and I'm not even sure if you guys will be able to tell in the video. When it comes to performance, all three of these devices have the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip, which means their performance in benchmarks is going to be about the same. However, there's one really important difference between the S25 Ultra and these two other devices, and it's that the S25 Ultra has a significantly larger vapor chamber. That means this phone can stay a lot cooler while you're gaming, which allows you to have higher frame rates for a longer period of time. So if you're someone who plays graphic-intensive games for an hour or more pretty often on your phone, you will notice a difference by going with the S25 Ultra. However, when it comes to performance for basic things like opening and closing applications, and even the smoothness of those applications when you're scrolling through them, that's going to be the same across all three devices. Especially since they all now come with 12 gigs of RAM, even the lowest storage tier for the S25. All three devices have the exact same type of fingerprint sensor, so their unlock speeds are going to be exactly the same as well. The battery life on all three of these devices is ridiculous. Even the S25 managed 8.5 hours of screen on time over 2 days. The S25 Plus took that even further with over 10 hours of screen on time in the same 2-day period, and the Ultra also managed over 10 hours of battery life, but over a smaller time frame. I think the reason for that is that most of the screen on time for the Ultra was front-loaded within the first day, whereas the regular S25 and the S25 Plus had most of their screen on time on the second day. And as you can see by these pretty flat lines, the standby time on these devices is really good. So regardless of which phone you go with, you're definitely going to get all-day battery life and then some. And I almost forgot, the battery sizes on all of these is 4,000 milliamp hours for the S25, 4,900 for the S25 Plus, and 5,000 for the S25 Ultra. And by the way, I did purchase all three of these phones with my own money to make this video, so if the video helps you make a purchase decision, I have YouTube shopping links on the bottom left of the video and in the description that will not only take you to the best available deals, but it'll also give me a small commission at no extra cost to you. So if you want to support the channel, using those links is an incredible way to do it. But regardless, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you who use my links, because that's what makes purchasing these devices even possible. When it comes to charge speed, all three of these devices charge significantly faster than the S24 series, with the S25 Plus charging the fastest. In just 30 minutes, it was able to charge from 2% up to 76%, just in that 30 minutes. That's crazy. The regular S25 was only able to charge to 59% in that same amount of time, also starting from 2% charged. And the reason for that is that the S25 only has super fast charging, not super fast charging 2.0 like the S25 Plus and the S25 Ultra. And the S25 Ultra has the second fastest charging with 67% charged in just 30 minutes. For perspective, my S24 Ultra could only charge to 50% in the same time frame, even though it also has super fast charging 2.0. And I think part of the reason for the faster charging on these other devices is because these new devices are better at managing heat, and the hotter a phone gets, the slower it charges. To get to a full charge, the S25 Plus only took 54 minutes, with the S25 Ultra coming in second at 1 hour and 2 minutes, and the regular S25 lagging behind at 1 hour and 13 minutes to get fully charged. At 1 hour with the S24 Ultra, I was still only at 72%, and it ended up taking 1 hour and 46 minutes to fully charge my S24 Ultra. And while we're talking about charging, I should also point out that all three devices support wireless power share, which is where you can wirelessly charge other devices off the back of your phone. Now let's test the speakers to see how they compare. And as you can hear, the S25 Ultra does sound noticeably better than the S25 and S25 Plus. It's not that these two are bad, it's just that the S25 Ultra is better. There's another S25 Ultra exclusive feature that may make it worth the splurge, but it's a bit of a mixed bag. I'm obviously talking about the S Pen. The reason it's a mixed bag is because Samsung removed the Bluetooth functionality this year, so you can no longer use your S Pen to take pictures, change your camera mode, switch between your favorite pens in the Samsung Notes app, or do anything else that required the Bluetooth functionality. But it's not all bad news, because the rest of the S Pen functionality is still there. So you can do things like convert your handwriting to text in real time, magnify anything on your screen, and immediately start taking a note with your screen off just by taking the S Pen out of the silo. Real quick guys, I don't pick these are just the verse of the day and they're kind of randomly generated, but I noticed this and I feel like somebody watching this video needs to see this. If you've been working at something and it's just a real big struggle and you feel like you just keep getting the rug pulled out from under you, I just want to encourage you not to give up because you don't know how close you are to seeing that breakthrough. Something that both the S25 Plus and S25 Ultra have that's not on the S25 is ultra-wideband technology. This allows the Plus and the Ultra to find nearby devices using augmented reality, where it gives you arrows to help you find the lost device. The S25 only gets a meter that fills up when you get closer, but regardless of which S25 you have, you still get the option to make the lost device ring if you need to. When it comes to weight, the S25 clocks in at about 162 grams, then the S25 Plus comes in at 190 grams, and the Ultra clocks in at 220 grams, which is actually 2 grams heavier than Samsung said it was. But that's still about 14 grams lighter than the S23 Ultra. When it comes to general usability, the S25 is obviously much easier to use with one hand because of its size, and it's also tremendously lightweight. And because of that small size, it's really easy to reach up into any corner without doing a lot of finger gymnastics. When it comes to the Plus and the Ultra, the differences are a lot less noticeable. And that's because the Plus isn't that much smaller than the Ultra. Like if I stack this on top here, you can see that it's only marginally less wide and shorter. So the amount of finger gymnastics required to reach the top is pretty much the same between these two devices. And if you wanted to get the Ultra, but were considering getting the Plus just because of the size and ease of use, I'd go ahead and get the Ultra because the size difference really isn't that much, and you're going to get used to all the finger gymnastics within a week anyway. Though I will say the added weight in the Ultra is noticeable compared to the Plus. So if you're going to have your phone in your hand for really extended periods of time, the Plus will actually be a bit more comfortable to use. Now it's time for the big question. Which one of these devices should you buy? Well, if you just want the most compact device that's incredibly fast with tremendous battery life, decent charge speeds, great cameras for closer objects, and you don't really care about macro photos, long zoom photos, or extended gaming sessions at maximum graphics quality, then the S25 will be an excellent buy. I can't stress enough how easy it is to use this device with one hand. Not to mention the pocketability of something so small, like this is a tremendous amount of power in such a small package. The S25 Plus becomes my recommendation if you have the same needs as the S25, but you just want that larger screen for work or gaming, and you want that ultra-wideband technology to make it easier to find your lost devices. The S25 Plus is also going to give you significantly faster charging. And while the Plus is significantly larger than the S25, and it is heavier, it's not so much heavier that it becomes uncomfortable to use. The S25 Ultra is for those of you who want it all. Incredible macro photos, the ability to zoom way in and still get great photos, faster autofocus in low light environments, a screen that's noticeably easier to see in bright sunlight, a huge screen for work and gaming with better extended gaming performance, the S Pen for signing PDFs, note-taking, or drawing, a significantly more scratch-resistant screen, a stronger titanium frame, and noticeably better speakers. Yeah, the S25 Ultra is significantly better than these other two devices, but be honest with yourself on whether or not you really need all of those extra features. Because I really do feel that most people will be plenty happy with either the S25 or S25 Plus. Not to mention, you're also going to save a ton of money by going with one of these two devices instead of the Ultra. The good news is that Samsung's having massive deals on all three of these devices right now on their website that you can get to by clicking the YouTube shopping links on the bottom left of the video or in the description. And Samsung runs these types of deals pretty frequently, so if you miss it this time, just check back again in another week or two, and you should see a pretty decent deal. And if you still need help deciding on whether or not it's even worth upgrading to one of these devices from a previous generation device, you can click this video here to see 30 brand new features on the S25 Ultra, many of which are also available on the S25 and S25 Plus. That's it for this tech episode. Jesus loves you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. What if I did want panning shots like this? Just super fast. Think that'd catch on? Get a lot of views?